To welcome you all today, I'd like to introduce our head of department, Su-Ming Teo, who I'm hoping is here.
Hi, Willa.
Hi, Su-Ming.
Hi. Thanks very much, Willa. So welcome everybody to the Perspectives Australasian Creative Non-Fiction Writing Workshop, which, as Willa said, is hosted by Macquarie. So I'm Su-Ming Teo, the head of department. I just want to tell you a little bit about our department before I hand over to Willa. So Macquarie was established just over a year ago when 3 departments within the Faculty of Arts merged. So this was the Department of English and Creative Writing, the Department of International Studies, and the Department of Media, Music, Communications, and Cultural Studies. So the merger brought together scholars working nationally and internationally in journalism, film, television, radio, literature, creative writing, and the performing arts, in English as well as in other languages. Within Macquarie, creative writing narrated through different types of media has always had a very important place. We are the home to award-winning documentary filmmakers such as Tom Murray, Karen Perlman, Alec Morgan, and Iqbal Barkat. We're also the home department to Kate Ross Manus' groundbreaking work of hybrid nonfiction, Small Wrongs, How We Really Say Sorry in Love, Life and Law, which is about remorse in the justice system and remorse in our everyday personal lives. And we're also the home to Rebecca Giggs' magisterial creative nonfiction, ecological and environmental work, Fathoms, The World and the Whale, which was the winner of the 2021 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Nonfiction, and which was shortlisted for the Stellar Literary Prize. Macquarie and its antecedents also have a strong reputation for the teaching of creative nonfiction writing, and Dr. Willa McDonald is absolutely central to this endeavor. So Willa was a former journalist. She's worked in print, television, and radio, including for the Sydney Morning Herald, The Bulletin, The Times on Sunday, ABC TV, and ABC Radio National. She's written 2 books and is currently completing a cultural history of colonial Australian literary journalism. She's co-editing an academic collection on social justice and literary journalism, and she's attracted a lot of attention for her creative nonfiction essays. So she's also an outstanding teacher of creative nonfiction, and she is, of course, the wonderful organizer of this symposium today. So I'd like to begin by thanking Willa for all the time and effort that you've put into this event, and I'll just hand over to you now. Thanks, Willa.
Thanks, Su-Ming, and I appreciate those words. It's now my pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Behrouz Boochani. Behrouz is a Kurdish-Iranian writer and cultural advocate. He's adjunct associate professor of social sciences at UNSW. He's non-resident visiting scholar at the Sydney Asia Pacific Migration Centre at the University of Sydney. He's visiting professor at Birkbeck, University of London. He's honorary member of PEN International, and he's the winner of the Anna Politkovskaya Award for Journalism. I did practice that one. He publishes regularly with The Guardian, and his writing also features in the Saturday paper. Boochani is also co-director with Arash Kamali Savastani of the 2017 feature-length film Chowka, Please Tell Us the Time. And of course, he's the author of the award-winning book No Friend But the Mountains, Writing from Manus Prison, which we're going to talk about today. So I'd like to now ask Behrouz a starting question. Behrouz, for those who haven't read it yet, can you describe your book and what you were trying to do with it? I'll just hold it up here for a moment. There you go. Just check that Behrouz is connected. Hi, Behrouz.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here. So actually, so this book, everyone talk about this book, but I think I should give some information about the book. That this book so far has been published in more than 20 languages. most of them European languages, and also like Italian, in Netherlands, in France, Germany, many countries actually. I think more than 35 countries. So which is I didn't expect that. And just recently I received the Chinese version as well. So I think that is great and still continues. So hopefully we have the Japanese version as well, already published in Arabic, in Kurdish, in Farsi as well, and in Spanish, Portuguese. So many countries. So that is a great achievement, because that creates a space and opportunity for me to introduce Australia and what Australian government has done in Manus Island and Nauru. So, but the book, I think, is with different layers. It's not only about refugees. I think it's we have a. If I say only one sentence about the book, is about a story which happened in the colonialism context. So, and this colonialism is not only about Australia, it's about Kurdistan as well, because a part of the book, a layer of the book, is about my homeland Kurdistan, which colonized in Middle East by Turkey, Iran, and other countries. So I just wanted to, challenge the system through this book, alongside other works that I've done in Manus and now that I'm working on.
No, thank you. That's fantastic that it's reaching all those countries and spreading the word about the impacts of colonialism. You've described the book as a prison narrative. That's how you prefer to describe it. And it through your own experiences, it paints a picture of a really brutish time on Manus Island, with small cruelties and a system that's based on racism and colonialism. Can you tell us more about some of the incidents in the book that you cover?
Yeah, I think we should look at the whole policy towards the refugees and the way Australia is, has banished people to Manus Island and Nauru. Yeah. And if we look at this, I think the whole policy is established on colonialism mentality, and it's written to the history of colonialism in Australia. And sometimes I say that it is a classic colonialism system, that obviously Australia is using those islands as a place of exile. And they actually dominated this policy, and they forced the Papua New Guinea and Nauru to accept that their land used to be as a land of exile. And the most interesting thing is, if we look at the history of classic colonialism, the first Europeans, the way when they reach to a place, a land, they say that we discover it, and they treat people, or they introduce people, indigenous people, in a way that no one exists there, no one lives there when we arrive there. But we know that before the European take control of those lands, there were civilization there. People were living there. In America, if you look at it, there were civilization like Aztec, Anka, very ancient civilization. So in this context, actually is like that, that we don't hear from the indigenous people in Manus Island and Nauru. Always we hear about security companies and also about refugees. So the indigenous people are forgotten in this context. Even the humanitarian organizations, the media who publish report and stories about Manus Island, it's only about refugees. So no one talk about indigenous people, but they exist. They live there. They have a population. So that's why in this book, actually, I want to say that whole policy established on that colonialism mentality. And if we look at it in the book, I try to actually picture the indigenous people, but mostly in my movie, Choka, Please Tell Us the Time. And I think your university has the movie, so you can go and watch it as a free. You already have that in your library, I think so, that people can go and watch it. So mostly in the movie, I try to show, actually make the indigenous people visible in the movie, but in the book, again, we see the role of indigenous officers who were working there and how they had a paradoxical connection and relationship with refugees, but because in the same time they are working for Australia, they are following the rules which created by Australian government, and in the same time they create a kind of friendship with refugees, because in the same time they are not happy with their bosses, which are Australians. So in this book, I try to picture that and show that. So, but in the journalism works, I did some articles about that. That one of them actually some of them particularly is about the indigenous people there and how they are victim under this policy.
Yeah, thank you. You've mentioned there that you've done a whole package of work. You've done journalism, you've done the film, which, yes, we do have, and you can also get for a very small fee on Vimeo. I will put that out there. But so if we could focus a bit more on the book again, what did the book itself add that the other forms couldn't? So the film does do a lot of things in particular, and it does feature the Indigenous people of Manus Island in a special way. But what did the book allow you to do that the film and your journalism didn't allow you to do?
Yeah, I think first of all, we should, I think that we should understand this book as a part of that package. So if we just look at the book, I think a part of the story, we don't understand it, because in the journalism, I think I published 100 articles while I was in Manus Island. And in these articles, I try to look at the system and the policy from different aspects. Some of them were just about politics. Some of them were about indigenous people. Some of them were about security companies. Some of them about individuals inside the prison. Different kind of articles that I wanted to actually describe the system. But if we look at all of these works, I thought that by the journalism works, we are able to expose the system. We are able to make people aware of the system and create change. But after a while, I found out that doesn't work. So journalism language is not strong enough, and also is a kind of language which is very related to official language, a language of propaganda which created by the government, a language of power structure. So that's why I thought that journalism is not capable, because making people aware is not enough in that context. So now most of people in Australia at least once heard about Manus Island and Nauru, and but nothing changed. Making people aware is not enough. I think I tried in this book to describe and explain how the system works, and not only to make people aware, to help people to understand systematic torture. When I say systematic torture, what does it mean, and how that system impact on the detainees. So that's why I shifted my works from journalism to literature and also to filmmaking. So that's why, again, I should say that we should look at all of these works as a package. And now that I'm talking with you, some of the PhD students are working on this case, and they are studying and they are researching. I know that one of them is in New Zealand, that I see him sometimes. One of them is in Italy, and some of them are in Australia. So I work with them, and also with artists who are making play, filmmakers, anyone who wants to work in this context. I think they sometimes I say they have to make contact with me, that I introduce this package. So if people read all of these works and watch all of the works that we did, I think they get a good understanding. So it is a package that we recorded for Australia, I think. And still this works continues, So I can talk about the current projects that we are doing. So, I mean, generally, it is a package. So we cannot just talk about this book particularly.
Yeah, no, I understood. I do want to focus a bit on the book, though, because we're in a creative nonfiction writing seminar, but I understand that it's an important package. What strikes me is that the book and all these things that you've been doing, they're not just about reaching the intellect. You're not just telling people information, but you're trying to touch them emotionally. You're trying to get them to feel what you've experienced and what other people are experiencing under this cruel system. And so I think that's what I was getting back at with the question about the form of the book. What is it that this memoir type form, prison narrative, can provide?
Yeah, I think this book, if we look at the form, actually, I try to use different kind of languages, like journalism language. We see, that the writer of this book is a journalist, or at least has a journalism background, or a kind of biography language is there, and also a political language and a philosophical language is there. But all of this happen in the literature, context and language. So I try to use all of these languages to convey, what I wanted to say, to explain. And But in my perspective, when I was writing the book, I was, of course, I was writing for unknown readers. I was not thinking about people in Australia. I was writing for, unknown readers. And it's really difficult when you are writing something, you don't think about your readers, and I think that is the writers, the novelists always struggle with that. When you write for a particular reader, I think that impact on your writing. So the best way is that just you write for yourself, or you write in your, when you are alone, just, explain just to some unknown readers, but that is very difficult to be like that. And but again, when I was writing, I expected that I impact on academic and researchers, and so that's why in the book, if you read it, sometimes become boring, because I try to explain what the systematic torture means, how that system works, the mentality of the system. So I think that impact on my writing. But generally, I expected to be here by academics and researchers. But we actually reached to, different audience and readers in the end.
Yeah, it certainly reached a wide audience, and it picked up a number of awards, including Victoria's top Premier's Literary Award and the Nonfiction Award. Were you surprised at the support the book got, at how much support you got from particularly Australia?
In some ways, yes, because for many years I was just writing, and I was here just like a political community, not actually people. And so that was incredible. Actually, I didn't expect to be like this, but I'm very happy about it, because I know myself that I know where I am, where did I come from, and I know that I use this, actually platform to support the minorities and indigenous people, not only in Australia, recently mostly in Iran, which is really difficult because majority of people in Iran are very nationalist. So it's really difficult to talk about minorities. So always I am under pressure. But I am happy that I use this platform just to talk about marginalized people. And but that was incredible, actually. I generally I'm not really, agree with the award culture, but for myself, I'm so happy. Yeah, that was very good, actually, because it gave me some power to challenge the system and talk about something that I really wanted to talk, but I didn't have that platform. So, but generally, I think, award culture is quite problematic. In cinema, in literature, but so that is how it is. We should accept that, and it was good for me.
No, well, it was a remarkable achievement. The book is a remarkable book. It really is. Let's go back a little bit. You wrote it text by text on smuggled mobile phones sometimes having to hide them in your mattress, sometimes not having a phone for months, I understand, when they were confiscated or stolen. I mean, that in itself is extraordinary. How one of our audience members sent in a question, how writing a book is such an enormous project. You have to remember what you've written. You've got to picture everything together as a whole. How on earth did you do it bit by bit in such a piecemeal way? How did you keep all that in your head and manage to produce something so beautiful and remarkable?
I think, again, now after 2 years that I am free, still I have something from that prison with me. For example, the way I use my phone. Still, when I go to WhatsApp, I think my mind works better. And sometimes I like to just work under the blanket, you know. So because in Manus for many years I was, you know, I wrote many of my works under the blanket because it was not safe, you know. And I remember on that time when I smuggled the phone into the prison, the guards came and they attacked my room and they took my phone. And I had to smuggle another phone in. Then again, after three months, 4 months, I remember they attacked my room, and on that time I was checking my Facebook. When they come in and they say, yeah, give your phone. And I said, okay, so let me sign out. So then I gave it to them. And I had to smuggle another phone in. And it was really difficult to smuggle a phone in because I was, on that time I smoked, and cigarette was our currency inside the prison. For example, when you wanted to buy a shirt or shoes or like that, you know, you say that, oh, it is 10 packet of cigarettes, or if this shirt is 12 packet, sometimes 15 packet, or a dictionary, something like that. I exchange actually my property, something like shirt and shoes and like that, with cigarette. Then I bought a phone. So it was really difficult for me to collect my cigarettes to buy something new, you know, because I used to smoke. So when they took my phone, it was really difficult. I was struggling to buy a phone. And finally, just I was writing, and because the reason I was writing on the phone, because I was not safe with the authorities. You know, anytime I expected that they come, if I would write on a paper, I could lose my writing. So the best way was just write the text and send it. And sometimes I have a poetic imagination about it, that these words, these sentences, they were flying from that tiny island to the big island, and they came together and became a book. And, you know, so you could see me everywhere for a while, that just I was like this in the bookshops. So there are many incredible stories actually around this book. But when I was writing on WhatsApp, so for example, if I would write a page or half of a page each night, I would send it out, but still I had that text. So then I combine them and I say to Omid that, this is the chapter 1 or chapter 2. But I didn't have time actually to edit my writing work. But I think that was very incredible, the way Omid Tawfiqian translated the book. He is such an incredible person, yeah, and very talented person. So I think we should always recognize the role of Nonfiction as a translator and as someone that I always had a intellectual conversation with him and discussion with him to understand the system, because this system that we are talking about is not a simple system. It's very complicated and it's really difficult. But Omid, I think he had a huge role, and also Manus Mansubi, that she translated many of my journalism works. So I'm in alongside Omid. So that's why I think if I didn't have these people around me, myself, and I didn't have this chance to communicate with them, I think this book was a completely different book.
Yeah, we were hoping Omid could join us today, but unfortunately he wasn't available. But so those texts flew away and were used by Omid and Manus they were translated and collated and then sent back to you at Manus Island to work on again.
Yeah. So they send it back as a PDF. It was like that. Yeah.
And did the guards ever, I mean, obviously they were taking your phone and obviously you were in a really dangerous and personally threatening environment. Did they ever catch on? They knew you were doing the journalism. Did they ever find these WhatsApp messages on your phone and realize you were up to something bigger, or?
No, because, for 2 years I was working as an unknown person. So that's why, because I was not safe at beginning. So after 2 years, I created a network. So I was quite strategic for 2 years. I created a network around myself. For example, Ben Doherty from Guardian, he knew me very well, So of course, if something wrong happened for me, Ben was there, and Ben is a very known journalist in Australia. People like Ben, I mean. So I created a network, the organization, humanitarian organization would know me. So I created a network, and after that, of course, I felt safe, and it was not easy for the guards to come and arrest me or do something wrong. But always I felt that I'm not safe. So I spent so much energy to protect myself. But it's very, very difficult to explain actually. It's just in just few words.
Yeah.
But once they came and they asked me many questions, they questioned me. And later on, 2017, they arrested me for a while. And they handcuffed me. So it was not always easy. Yeah, it was difficult.
Did making yourself visible, coming out in your own name, and in fact writing this book, making people visible, making the whole system visible, ironically, did that make it safer for you? How important was it to make yourself and others visible, bring you all into the awareness of people around the world?
Yeah, that is, I think, is important. I always say that in that context, or even writing a love poem is a political act, because by writing a love poem or create a piece of music or a song or any kind of writing or in artistic language, actually you challenge the mentality of the system. You challenge the propaganda against the refugees. You challenge the system which designed to dehumanize the refugees. So when you write like that, you make the refugees visible. And this visibility is not only just to say that these people exist or we exist. It's more than that. We exist in that island and we are human, we are human. So when you write a love poem, actually you show your humanity side to people, that you are a human. That's why you love someone or you be loved by someone. So, I mean, that is very important, that anything happening in that context is a political act, because you challenge the power structure, you challenge that system, and I think that's why this visibility, we should understand it alongside other concepts like humanity, like individuality, and how we are as a human, because in we used to categorize people, especially people in the Western countries. They used to categorize people. They used to put all of the refugees in one category. But refugees are different people with different backgrounds, different, identity. And in this work, actually, I try to show that. And, in all of my journalism works, some of my articles are about just individual detainees inside the prison camp. And, if you look at those articles, I just try to show that these people are human. We are human. We are not angel. So in this book, people are not angel. And people are not evil as well. People are people, We are not perfect. We are not angel. We are not completely innocent, same as everyone, So in this book and other works, I try to do that, just to say that we are people, we are people, and we are not angel. We are not evil.
I think that's one of the remarkable achievements of the book, how much it touches the reader and brings home that these are real people in desperate trouble, really. I want to ask you a little bit about the line between fact and fiction in your book. So I know you've compressed 2 journeys by sea into one, and you've changed, you've described the characters allegorically, except in some circumstances. So can you explain a little bit about the approaches you took in terms of the poetic nature of the book and the allegorical nature of the book? I'm sorry for the background noise. I might switch to headphones if it gets too difficult.
I think we should look at the place that I was working. I was writing about people who I was living with, So that's why I had to write in a way to protect them. I had to write in a way that to protect myself, because you cannot write about for example, if you live with your partner, you cannot write about your partner in a, in a way that to make her upset, So you should write about her in a fiction way, that if she get angry at you, you say that it's not you. You just inspired me. So I mean, in that context, when I was writing, so I was living with hundreds of men in such a small place. So in that context, I had to write to protect them, their identity, because I didn't know where I get freedom, when we get freedom. And I had to protect myself as well in front of them or in front of those characters. So that's why I created new characters, but I combine some characters and create a new character. So when you do that, actually you are doing fiction or writing, but the story is there. So I picked up the stories. For example, in one of the stories in the book that, for example, I talk about, a character that he beaten up by the guards. So actually many people in Manus Island experienced that the guards beat them, the guards put them on the ground, handcuffed them. So when that story happened, so I combined some of these characters with some of these stories and I created a new story, and that's why I say that, and that part that I write about Kurdistan, it's more poetic, and I think that is an approach I didn't want to. There are some writers who come to West, I mean, from our countries, and when they want to write, they write in a way to make the Western readers happy. I didn't want to make you happy, and I think that is a colonialism mentality when you write for Western readers in a way that they feel good and this, our countries are wonderful, our society is wonderful, and look at these people where they are coming from. So that's why I don't give so much information about my background, and even if I give that information, it is in a poetic language, it's more fictional language. So I mean, generally, I didn't want to write a book to make people feel comfortable. I wanted to make people feel uncomfortable. And that, I know that creates some enemies for me as well. But yeah, I didn't want to make people feel comfortable about everything. This book make people angry sometimes, even make myself angry. And the writer is quite a angry person because I was angry in Manus Island, because I was hungry sometimes, because I was struggling to survive, because I was in competition with the tennis to feed myself, because the system design was designed like that, to create a competition between the tennis, that they fight each other, they hate each other, and they divide our small community. So of course, I am not in this book. I'm not. Yeah, I was writing in that context. If I write about it now, I'm more definitely I will be a kind person, because now I'm not hungry. Now I'm free. Now I don't see God to control me every day, every moment. Now I don't live under camera. Now I don't go to a very dirty toilet, and I don't stay in the line to go to toilet every day. I don't stay in a long queue to get food. So I mean, so when all of that happened, so of course you cannot be a kind person. You see some uh, anger in your voice. Yeah.
But this part of the strength of the book, besides the emotional connection, well, the emotional connection of it, that anger is necessary in a way. And the immediacy of you being in that situation and writing as it's happening. I think I read an interview with you somewhere where you said you couldn't write it in the same way now because you're not part of it anymore. But that part of the strength of it is that immersion, that involvement in the moment when this awful brutality and manipulation and playing you off against each other is happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't want to sometimes think about it, because now I am in a, once I say that I prefer to write a poem about this city that I'm living, to write a poem or about when I walk in the park on the hills. It's over for me, you know. That was a part of my life which finished. But of course, with the refugees, still I work with the, you know, I take this book with myself everywhere, you know, on future. I mean, I'm too active in the universities. Always I talk about Manus Island, but with literature, it's finished for me. You know, I don't want to write a story about Manus Island, you know. So, but with academic works, I think always I talk about Manus Island almost every day.
Well, there's still work to be done. So the book, how influential do you think the book has been in changing? I know that Australian government policy hasn't dramatically changed, but how influential do you think the book has been in changing minds, in bringing people along to seeing what's going on?
It's really difficult to talk about that. I think other people should talk about it. But I see, you know, that this book changed many things. I think the biggest change is that impact on other refugees, not only in Australia, all around the world. I received many messages, and I know that many people started to write, and even some of the refugees in Manus Island. So I mean, everyone or many of the refugees in Turkey, in Greek, in Indonesia, they think that they are able to tell their stories, and I think that is important. You know, that we share the stories. Although I don't think that this book is only about refugees. You know, I look at this book in a different way. You know, but generally, I think the first impact was on the refugees community and refugee people. But and also how refugees should stand up for their rights, you know. And but in terms of how we create change in Australia, Australia is a very, I find Australia a weird country, a very paradoxical country and society. So it's really difficult to say, to create change in that society, you know. And sometimes I feel it's really difficult to create change in Australia. You know what I say, what I mean.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we all know what you mean.
after 200 years of indigenous movement and struggle, what changed in Australia towards indigenous people? So how we should expect by writing only a book, we change that country to change the policy towards the refugees. It is only a book.
But it has done a lot. It really has done a lot. I think it is having, nothing changes anything overnight. And I think it is part of the constant chipping away. And it's been great. Was it difficult to get the book published?
Not really. I think I've got so much support from people in Australia, civil society in Australia. And no, it was actually not a hard process.
Did you contact the publisher, or did the publishers approach you when they heard about you making your?
Yeah, I think the publisher contacted me, Jordi. He contacted me, and then yeah, because I was writing on that time. Yeah.
And it was was it difficult? Do you know anything about the difficulties they went through? And were they fearful of having to censor anything? Did they try and ask you to soften any parts of it or change anything?
Yeah, for example, I don't know that I'm allowed to say that, but let's share that. For example, they say that we should change the name of Prime Minister in the book. And I said no. Yeah. So, I mean, I said no, I prefer that we don't publish this book at all. So, but I think that is a very natural in that industry, that of course they think about something and they have some suggestions. So, but the whole process was very good and very, yeah, I don't complain about that.
Yeah, understood. I think too, the publishing industry, the whole of the literary industry in Australia is very dependent on government grants as well sometimes. So that doesn't help. And it's an irony that your awards were mostly government state funded awards. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, do you
They
have...
didn't actually, so people say that sometimes, but you know, this book was, you know, in many awards, they didn't include it. They didn't want, you know. For example, I think it was an award for, I'm not sure, it was Prime Ministership Award. I think it was that first they accepted, and when the book was getting close to be among the finalists, they kicked. Yeah, they say, "Oh, we don't want." Yeah, it is not. It's against rules, you know. So I mean, it was not easy. Yeah, in many awards they didn't accept it. They didn't include it because they said Behrouz is not an Australian citizen. So we are not allowed to do that.
Yep, and yet we claim you as a great Australian writer. So how does that make you feel?
About what?
Us, Australia, claiming you as an Australian writer, giving you awards on one hand, you know, in the circumstances.
I don't think that Australia claimed that. Yeah, I don't think. People, you know, like Richard Flanagan say that, but I think we shouldn't look at this in that way, you know. Just it is a feeling, you know. It's like a friendship feeling. It's like something like that. It's not
Yeah,
I cannot criticize that too much. Yeah, of course I'm not Australian. I never been in Australia, and I won't be in Australia, and I was not in Australia. But I mean, yeah, it's better we don't criticize that, because just few people say that. It's not a big deal. Yeah, people don't say that.
Fair enough. Do you have any advice for, you've talked about other refugees and asylum seekers in other parts of the world and in all over the place being enabled to write their own stories, feeling encouraged to write their own stories. Do you have any advice for those writers, and do you have any advice for people in Australia wanting to change the system, how we can go about it?
I think it's very difficult. Let me answer this to say something advice, because if any say it is it's general thing. So let me talk about the project that we recently did. This project actually is a journal called Southly. I think you know that journal, yeah, which published by UNSW. Yeah, so I, Omid, Janet Galbraith, and Hani Abdi, we just published the journal. So I think it is about 300 pages, more than 300 pages. So people can buy it as a hard copy. So I suggest that you order it for your university. So this just recently we printed that just I think last week. So it is a project that we have been working on over the past 2 years as an editor. So 95 people contributed to this journal, and most of them are refugees from Indonesia, Australia, Manus, Nauru, alongside the established writers like Lukashenko, indigenous writer. So in this journal, it's very important, I think, because it's a collection of works which written by refugees. Some of them are poetry, some of them just literary pieces, and some of them are very short stories. So I think this work is very important because we created a space for the refugees to share their works in a book, and also for the readers is important, especially the students and academics who are working in this field. Actually, we take them into the refugees' life experience through literature, language, again. So that is very important. So I think it will be great for your department if you look at this journal, and it will be great if we have an event about it, because it is a new work that we did, and I think it's very important. No Front But the Mountains is a project which finished. So let's talk about new projects, which this journal is one of them. And also I should say that hopefully at beginning of next year, we have another book, which is a collection of my articles, which I did in Manus Island. So I will talk about that later on future, but for now, this journal I think is important, and it's very critical work,
Sounds fantastic, and I'd love to do that.
95 people contributed to this work, and they are not professional writers, but they write beautifully.
No, it sounds fantastic. Behrouz, yeah. Okay. Behrouz, it's time for us to now switch over to questions from the audience. Yeah. And we have two people helping out today. One is Professor Matthew Ricketson and the other is Associate Professor Sue Joseph, and they will be conveying questions directly to you that people post. But thank you, that was fantastic. Thank you for that interview.
Thank you. I think I should say again that I think definitely your department should reach out to this journal and provide it. It's incredible work that I had a small role at that work, but I think we should acknowledge UNSW, we acknowledge the journal and acknowledge Janet Galbraith, Honey, Omid, they did a great job. So I was just a part of them, as an editor.
Thank you. I'm already looking forward to putting things onto my students' curricula. Sounds great. Sue or Matthew, do we have any audience questions?
Not yet, Willa. Behrouz, can you just tell us what the name of the journal again that you were talking about?
Southly. It's difficult for me.
Yeah, Southerly.
Yeah, pronunciated, yeah. Okay. Southly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So no questions yet, Willa. If you want a question, just put it in the Q&A, folks.
Okay, while we're waiting, can I ask you, Behrouz, a little bit about the way you left Manus Island and made your way to Christchurch? So it's just a fascinating story because the Australian government must have turned a blind eye to you leaving. You had an international travel document, I understand, and you had the support of advocacy organisations in the background. But can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
I think that is a long story. So very long story, but I think we played with the Australian government because they thought that I'm going to America. Yeah, because I was following the process with America and suddenly I just appeared here. And I know, I have some information that how they were angry because they didn't know how that happened. They didn't expect. Yeah, they didn't expect. But that happened. So that was, I think, the last punch. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And the footage of you arriving in New Zealand is very moving. You must have felt just such a sense of relief, unreality, but relief.
Definitely, that was incredible. But I think I should mention that now that I'm talking with you, still there are 100 people in Port Moresby. So
still not released.
Yeah. I think so far 90% of the refugees in Manus Island and Nauru are free now, but still 10% remain. So yeah, that is the reality.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're starting to get some questions.
We do. We've got a question here from Joe. As both an Indigenous academic and a creative non-fiction writer, I would like to ask how the writing process challenges the concept of lineal time. In Western world, we would position lineal time, past, present, and future. In Indigenous world, this can be challenged. Does creative non-fiction allow this space? Behrouz, can you answer that?
I think what I understand is, I don't really understand the question well.
I think the question is about linear time. In an Indigenous space, there's a different way of looking at time. And in creative nonfiction, I guess, can this be transposed to people not understanding Indigenous time and understanding Indigenous time? Or does it need a big explanation?
Yeah, I think, you know what is important, not only Indigenous, I am an Indigenous person as well. I'm Kurdish.
Yes.
And we have a resistance. And sometimes I say that what's happening in Manus Island was just I borrowed the resistance culture in Kurdistan, and I reproduce it in against another colonialism system, you know, because colonialism mentality always is same everywhere, you know, against anyone. It can be against the, you know, refugees, minorities, indigenous people. Everywhere is same. But what I understand is, I think I look at all of these works, which written by indigenous people, by minorities, marginalized people, as actually unofficial history. And because we have an official history and an unofficial history, so I call it the history from down to up, or from low to up, you know. And this history actually, I think the knowledge is there because the minorities understand the power better than majority, because the power, they are always, power is there and power impact on them, and power actually marginalize them. So that's why I think the knowledge, the true knowledge is there. The true knowledge written by indigenous writers, you know. If we want to really know Australia, if we want to know the mentality of Australia and history of Australia, we should read works by indigenous writers, you know. And because the true knowledge is there, you know, the true knowledge is in a part of that part of history, which is an official history, you know.
Behrouz, that is so well put, so very well put, and I think it's about perspective, but it's also as part of the colonial form, or colonial people, I guess. When you actually engage with Indigenous history here, it's just mind-blowing, and I think on an individual level we can do that. And one day maybe there will be a critical mass which will affect policy. That's
definitely.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay, Matthew, do you want to do the next question?
Yes. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Behrouz, for your talk today, which has been excellent. But this is a question from James, and he says, you said you thought in the interview with Willa, you said you thought Australia was a paradoxical country. What paradoxes do you see in Australian attitudes and culture? I think
Australia, I think it's paradoxical because it's really difficult to understand Australia. Because Australia, if I give you an example,
sure.
I would like to give you some example that Australia has spent $12 billion on this policy, you know, and $12 billion is a huge amount of money, you know, but no one cares in Australia, you know. And these security companies in Manus and in Nauru, they make money, you know, huge, but no one cares, you know. The media don't follow, you know. We have something in journalism that just follow the money. In Australia, of course, this system is corrupt. Of course, this system is corrupt, but no one in Australia care. But sometimes they care about $200, which stolen by you know, by a politician, and just people complaining. People, you know, go to the media. People talk about it, you know, and that's why I say it. Of course, it's paradoxical. A refugee, Buella family, you know that they separated them, and the whole country were talking about it in a way that nothing happened in Australia. But before that case, but in the same time, many people have been separated in the same time. And after a month, they deported a refugee, a Sri Lankan refugee, to Sri Lanka. And his daughter, which she's 6 or 7 years old, she's in Australia. They separated her. If we look at this case, it's worse than Buella family case, because they separated them. So I mean, in Australia, people, I think, they forget about things, you know, they forget about things. And we hear many stories about refugees, just people, just for a while, just talk about them, then forget about it. But the system is there. No one talk about the system. The system exists. The system creates this violence, you know. So Buella family is not only one case, you know. Even if we release them, if they get back together and send them to Buella, you know, nothing changed. It's still that system there. And on ABC TV, on Q&A program, during the Black Lives Matter movement, they invited some indigenous writers and actors to the Q&A I was watching. The representative of Liberal Party was there, Labour Party was there. Everyone on the stage, they were angry about the system. The audience were angry. The indigenous guests were angry. Everyone were angry. And in the end, the indigenous, I think, actor, he got angry, and she said, "Don't kill us. That is our message. Don't kill us." So that is paradoxical. How that possible? You know, on a pro-national program, everyone are supportive, everyone are angry, and in the same time, the actors say that don't kill us. It is a simple message, don't kill us. So that is paradoxical.
Yeah.
How in a country everyone are, so who is doing that? Who is killing indigenous people, you know? So that is my question. Of course it is paradoxical. You know?
Yeah, no, I think you make the point really strongly. It's paradoxical, and it's very frustrating to, not only for indigenous people, but for other people, yourself obviously, but for other people who see these things and are frustrated by the injustice and by the amount of money that's spent to keep in place a cruel system, and to keep refugee families separated and so on. Thank you for that answer. I'll hand you back to Sue now.
The thing is that they will, you know, in the next election, they will elect this prime minister again. That is paradoxical as well. These people should become tired of this government after 9 years.
You don't even live here. We're tired. Yeah, okay, Sue, you're the next one.
Thanks, Bruce. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that. I've got a question here from Toby Behrouz. He says, I teach No Friend But the Mountains in my 3rd year English unit Contemporary Global Literature. Many students say that they are moved and educated by the book. and many students are greatly affected by your use of poetry. Are you hoping to write more poetry in the future?
I think I'm not a poet. I'm not a poet because I think when we call someone a poet, I think we cannot call someone who just writes few poetry per year. A poet is someone who, publish book, someone who create his or her own language. So I'm not a poet, but I live like a poet sometimes,
Yeah.
and I use poetry for my own writing,
Because what you
So
said when in the talk, you actually said you'd like to write about this city and the park, and that's got to be a healing action for you. And poetry can really feed into that. So basically, please write poetry for yourself, but also for us.
I think, I come from a culture which poetry is the actually main part of the culture, So Kurdish culture and also Persian language, they has a long history of poetry. So in Iran or in Kurdistan, actually they definitely they don't recognize me as a poet. So everywhere that I go, I should just go and sit in the poetry session and just listen. But yeah, I'm not a poet. Yeah, but I write sometimes. It's okay. I write.
I think you might have a poetic heart. How's that?
Now I'm working on a collection of short stories. Hopefully.
Okay. Matthew.
All right, this one, Behrouz, is from Rolando, and he talking about his 11-year-old son who is watching this with him. And the question from his son is, how small was the area you lived in on Manus Island, and how did it feel to be isolated with people you may not know and may not feel safe around? Can you talk about your experience when you found out you could leave detention?
Yeah, I think that is very interesting question because people always forget about that. Like a soccer ground, as much as a soccer ground was the place.
Right. Yeah.
And we were like 300 people. Yeah, but in a place that I was living, I was living for a while, for like more than a year. I was living in a tent, and in that tent, like 70 people were sleeping. Yeah, so I was everywhere actually. They just so in that place, if you read the book, you see that how it's frustrated when you are so surrounded by many people. You become tired of your partner as well. Sometimes you need to have a space. So just imagine that you live with hundreds of men.
Yeah. Okay. Sue?
I think Willa wanted to say something. Willa?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, excuse me. I just wanted to ask if in those circumstances, and this is a question that an audience member posted earlier when they registered, did your writing sustain you? Was there something about the creative practice that helped you keep going in those circumstances?
Like what?
Did writing the book, writing No Friend But the Mountains, did that give you something that helped you to keep going in those awful circumstances?
Definitely, I always say that. So we should look at the system again. The system designed to dehumanize you. If we say only one sentence about Australian policy towards the refugees. If we say only one sentence, which is a system which designed to dehumanize you. So when that happens, a system which designed to take your identity, to reduce you to a number. So in front of that system, I think the most powerful way to challenge it is to be creative. And writing is a creative way. And when you write, actually you take control of the system, So that's why I said I survived through my writing, And this creative, when I say creative, it's not only writing. Sometimes you can be funny in that circumstance and make other detainees funny. Mason Dehor in the book is that character. He's not writing, but he's dancing, he's singing, and he is funny.
Yeah, that character is really striking. I still think about that person. Sue, do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah, thanks, Willa. Behrouz, what should media organizations, including publishers, newspaper editors, and agents, keep in mind when reaching out to refugee writers for the first time? What are some of the things the industry can do better to amplify refugee stories responsibly?
I think not only publishers, anyone who is working with refugees in detention or mostly in detention, I think it's really, I should say that it's really difficult. It's very difficult to work with refugees because we have an imbalance of power in that relationship when you work with a refugee, because that refugee first that he or she is a detainee and you are free. That is, so when that happens, that refugee is in a weak position, and that weak position is not only in that context. That person doesn't know English well. That person doesn't have money. That person doesn't have a family. And you have all of this, or you have, so when that happens, it is an imbalance of power. So that you should be experienced to work with refugees, And for example, for me, for many years, I was writing, and people didn't treat me as a journalist, as a writer, Although in the end, I think it was like a punishment because I wrote in that book. I mean, it's really difficult to work with refugees. For the publisher, for advocates, artists, anyone who work with refugees, it's very important that we work with refugees in a way to be equal. We treat them as a human, as a human, as someone who is equal with us. It's really difficult to be like that. We don't make judgment. When a refugee say that I'm writing a book, why we should judge? We don't know that person. And I think that is important. We don't judge. Try to don't judge. Yeah, and just look at their work. But it's really difficult. You should be an experienced person, I know many people who have been working with refugees for many decades. Still, they make mistakes.
Of course.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Great answer, Behrouz. Thank you. Matthew?
Sure. Okay. This is from Yashi, and they're asking, how did you decide, Behrouz, what stories to include in your writing and what not to? Because they're sure, because of your experience, that you have lots and lots of stories. So how did you choose what to include and what not to include?
I think it's really difficult because sometimes the stories come. Always I say that the stories are coming. For example, like a month ago, I was thinking about writing a story, a short story, and just I was thinking about it. Then suddenly I wrote a story about I wrote a different story, So I mean that you are not aware, a part of this process is unconscious, and so that's why it's really difficult. But generally, when you want to write a book or a novel or anything, of course you have I think the best way is that you create your the structure in your mind and what generally you want to say, but just leave it. The stories come, and sometimes you write something that you didn't think about it, and especially with the short stories, I think you should really know what you are going to write. But with the a novel, I think the stories come. Just write, the stories are coming.
Okay, thank you for that, Sue.
That is my experience. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Behrouz, we have another question here. It's not so much a question, it's a statement. Please do let Behrouz know that there are many people in Australia who do care very, very much and are ashamed and disgusted and are doing everything in our power to try and get others to understand and care.
Yeah, I know. I know.
That's part of the paradox, isn't it? That's part of the paradox.
Yeah, exactly. I have been working with many people in Australia. I have very great friends in Australia.
And I would add, we are as bemused by government decisions as you are. And as I said before, critical mass, once we get to critical mass, maybe that will make a difference in policy.
Yeah, I know. I mean that I know that context.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
I have been writing about Australia for many years.
Yeah.
And I know that context. I have been, thinking about Australia. So, but generally, sometimes even I say that I don't care about someone like Peter Dutton. He's only a person,
Yeah.
So I think about the structure and the mentality, which create this policy rather than people. I know in Australia there are many people who have been fighting against this system. And sometimes I see Australian people here, in New Zealand. So generally, I think obviously many people care.
Thanks, Behrouz. Matthew.
Okay, so this one is from Hannah, who thanks you for your eloquence, Behrouz, when you spoke about people not being angels or evil, just people. And they're asking, when you were detained, you were incredibly aware of the politics and philosophy of your situation, but immersed in it and unable to escape its brutal and manipulative effects. Do you consider kindness a necessity or a luxury?
Pardon? I couldn't really understand this question.
Okay. I think, well, let's come to the last part of it, which is about kindness. And I think the questioner is thinking about you when you were in Manus Island, I think, and whether being kind whether to other people or to yourself, is something that you need to do, or whether it's a luxury, if that helps.
I think, you know, long time ago, I wrote a story, a letter from Manus Island, which published in the Saturday paper. I think that story, you know, I said many things about kindness, and always I refer people to read that story, a letter from Manus Island, yeah, which published in the Saturday paper.
Okay.
And also another article, Manus Prison Theory, which published in the Saturday paper again. So in Manus Prison Theory, I compared Manus Prison with a movie by Ken Loach, Daniel Blake. I don't know that you already watched this movie or not.
I haven't, no.
This movie actually, I think, is very, very close to Manus prison system, because this system, in Manus prison theory, we say that the system designed to create hate between people, to divide our community. And it's not only Manus. In Australia, in everywhere, we see that this system, you know, we saw during the corona that how people were struggling and fighting for toilet paper. You know, I think this system divide us. So to challenge it, I think there is no way just to not only think about yourself. Yeah.
So maybe in that sense, kindness is necessary.
Yeah, that is kindness. Yeah, but sometimes you can be, because kindness is very natural feeling. So I mean that even if you are not kind, still you can not only think about yourself. Just don't be selfish, because we are living in the same society, same community. So this kindness, actually, it's really difficult to ask people to be kind, because it is a natural feeling. And I think most of people are kind enough. Yeah, just we should remind them that how is important that we care about the society as well. We are living in the same society. So of course we cannot ignore injustice. You know, when something happened for you know, marginalized people, minorities, of course we should care, because that come later, they come to us. And we see in Australia that how this policy towards the refugees impact on political culture in Australia. We see that same people are running the country.
Yeah.
Peter Dutton cannot be kind, cruel at us, and in the same time kind with you.
Yeah.
You cannot be cruel at the street and be kind at your home. That is impossible.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Behrouz. Very gracious answer. How do you achieve, this is a question from someone who is from New Zealand. How do you achieve balance between your continued work around refugee concerns and life in a new place with new people and new choices? Is your time in New Zealand shifting your perspective?
Actually, in New Zealand, I look at New Zealand for now. I have done lots of events in New Zealand, like in Wellington, in the universities, everywhere. Still, I do events. I'm quite active in New Zealand, but New Zealand for me is like a home. So I don't really engage with politics in New Zealand very strongly. I look at New Zealand as a home. I like to just do cycling at the afternoon in New Zealand and enjoy it. I don't want that people stop me at the street and say, why did you say this? Yeah, but generally I do lots of work in New Zealand, especially in the universities. But in terms of activism, not as much as Australia and Iran. I mean, in the media, I do nothing here. Yeah. But New Zealand is very difficult as well sometimes. Yeah, but I like it.
I think everyone likes New Zealand at the moment. I mean, it seems they've got a great prime minister, I think, anyway. And
people say hi to each other in New Zealand in the street.
Yeah, it's a very lovely place, and it's a very beautiful place. And I think if you're looking for peace, you might be able to find some there. Matthew, I think this is the last question.
Yes, thank you for that. And it's from Jonathan, who thanks you, Behrouz, for sharing your story today and your insights. And Jonathan's asking, he says, you said journalism doesn't work and that it's not capable of driving change. I'm wondering if you could elaborate or say a bit more about this. For example, Jonathan asks, does journalism fail because the way it expresses itself is potentially just more noise on top of noise, which maybe prevents genuine change happening? So that's
I
his
think
question.
that is a part of journalism, but I think my biggest problem with journalism is that the media always rely on the official sources. And, the politicians always have a big platform in the media, but I think, that is my biggest problem with journalism, So of course they create noise on top of noise, but generally my biggest problem with journalism is that. But the good news is that we are in the age of social media. I know that social media is really problematic as well, but at least the individuals, sometimes we don't need mainstream media anymore like before. We can share.
Well, you couldn't have written your book without new technology, without the mobile phone to send it. Like, I was very struck when you said before, if you had paper and you were writing your story, it could have been taken away from you by the guards, but because you could write it on the mobile phone, you sent your story away so that they couldn't get it. So even if they take your mobile phone away and you couldn't get another one, you still had some story that had been sent out. So you're right, it's the new media technologies are good and bad.
And the way we, not only me, the refugees use Twitter, Twitter as a platform, or Facebook. But generally with media, I think I'm very happy that sometimes we don't need the mainstream media.
Yeah.
We can't say everything on Twitter, for example.
No, sure. But as you said before, you have made a strategic network with people like Ben Doherty and other journalists who are, they're not just noise on noise journalists. They are creating important stories.
Yeah, I think Ben Doherty, if you look at his works, Helen Davidson, and some other journalists, we see that really they did a great job. Yeah, it's incredible what they did.
Okay, we do actually have a few more questions.
Oh,
There's
okay.
one from Danielle. If I'm reading your book and enjoying it so much. On a personal note, what are the simple things in life you now enjoy or look forward to?
Simple thing. Yeah. I enjoy walking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And cycling.
And cycling just recently. Yeah.
Good on you. That's great. Okay, I think we've got a last question, Matthew.
Yeah, okay. This is from Rolando, and they're asking, how do you feel about the Prime Minister in Australia at the moment, Scott Morrison, owning objects such as "I Stop These," which is what's in his office about talking about the boats, or when do you compare refugees now or a couple of years ago compared to what happened in the 1970s and early 1980s, particularly people coming from after the end of the war in Vietnam there?
I think I don't have a great knowledge about the history of migration in Australia, but I think everything in Australia really changed since the Tampa ship.
Yeah.
And this year was the 20 years anniversary of Tampa. And on that day that John Howard stand up and say, we decide to come to this country. So that was not only about refugees, that shifted politics in Australia. Sometimes I talk with people in Australia, they said, oh, Australia was a better country, actually. The democracy was, but now it's broken. I think that we should really recognize that this policy towards refugees doesn't damage only refugees, that damage the whole country, the political culture in Australia. So I think that is very important, that we look at it, we recognize this history. That is important. If we don't recognize history, we cannot create change. We should recognize what we did and what is wrong. If we recognize that, we solve it, we think about it, we acknowledge it, we try to fix it, to change it. But in Australia, there is, I think, this mentality that people just, they forget about things. Yeah, they forget about things, especially with this, we are in the age of, social media. Just people forget about things very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I
don't know if that was a good answer or not. Yeah, I think
that was a good answer. That was a good answer.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm not saying it's a happy answer. I'm saying it's a good answer. You're right. 20 years since the Tampa, 20 years since the terrorist attacks in New York. So much has happened. So much has been forgotten. Yeah. Okay. Over to you, Willa.
Yeah. Thanks, Sue and Matthew, and thank you, Behrouz. I mean, for me, I'm working on a colonial history, and I'm staggered. As you said, it's been 200 years, and we're still oppressing Indigenous people here. It's a corrosive attitude and corrosive system. Behrouz, is there something that you would like to say before we finish up? Any last comment?
No, thank you very much for creating this opportunity. I think it's great that still people care. People want to really know about this system. And just I should say that we have some projects which are coming out, and it's great if you want to follow up these stories. And yeah, so that journal that I was talking about is really important. 95 people contributed. And other works which are coming out, one of them is a play by indigenous actors, and yeah, many works. So yeah, it would be great if you follow up these stories.
No, that would be fantastic. Is the play being done in Australia?
Yeah. So that's done. So because of Corona, this play actually is about indigenous people and kids in custody, but it's related to Manus Island. So again, we link between these two
issues.
Yeah. So that is really incredible work.
Yeah.
And hopefully on January, they release it. So just I had a small role in that project, but I think it's very important.
And do you know what it's? Do they have a final title yet, or for the play?
I don't know the title, but they will release it.
Yeah.
So they will talk. Yeah. So it will be on I think on March or January. We had a meeting last week. So we will share more information about it. But the work done, and it's incredible play.
Thanks, Behrouz. We'll keep an eye out for it, and so appreciate you coming along today and the work that you're doing. You're a remarkable human being, and we just appreciate what you've contributed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming along. We'll close up now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.